War can be terrifying for both humans and animals alike, and it's tragic that sometimes animals get drawn into our conflicts. Thankfully today, less animals are used in battles, but wild animals still feel the effects of war. If they're not affected directly from the conflict, they can still be harmed by the negative effect on the environment, and the increase in outbreaks of disease and invasive species. Famously, the brown tree snake found its way to Guam on military vessels, and this is how many rodents found their way to small Pacific islands. It's easy to understand why animals would want to fight back against humans in times of war, and strangely, in a few occasions they have. This is not a video about animals that have been used as a weapon for war, but instead it's a video about animals that have fought back against humans in times of conflict. If you're a soldier on a battlefield, you not only have to look out for your enemy, but you also have to look out for predators that may be in the area. Dead soldiers on battlefields can attract predators, and these predators are more than happy to take advantage of the situation. For our first story, we will be heading back in time to World War II, and we will be heading over to Ramree Island. Ramree Island is a small island off the coast of Myanmar, and it's separated from the mainland by a narrow canal-like strait which is only 150 metres wide. During the months of January and February of 1945, this island saw a very bloody battle. The British and Indian soldiers were fighting against the Japanese, and this was part of the offensive on the southern front in the Burma campaign. After a hard-fought battle, the Indian and British soldiers were victorious, and the Japanese soldiers were in retreat. This is the part where the story gets slightly murky, because it's believed that large parts of what happened next are embellished, and the losses are recorded to be much greater than they actually were. It's believed that the Japanese soldiers trying to escape Ramree Island were forced into the mangrove swamps, and these swamps are home to many dangerous predators. As I've covered in my most recent video, saltwater crocodiles love to hunt in brackish waters, and the mangrove swamps on Ramree Island are the perfect habitat for saltwater crocodiles. It's believed that hundreds of Japanese soldiers were killed by these crocodiles, with estimates ranging from 300 to 900 casualties. A veteran of the Burma campaign named Bruce Wright described the events of the battle, and he said the scattered rifle shots in the pitch-black swamp punctured by the screams of wounded men crushed in the jaws of huge reptiles, and the blurred worrying sound of spinning crocodiles made a cacophony of hell that's rarely been duplicated on this earth. At dawn, the vultures arrived to clean up what the crocodiles had left, and out of the 1,000 Japanese soldiers that had entered the swamps of Ramree, only around 20 were found alive. Most experts agree that it is possible that saltwater crocodiles killed quite a few soldiers, but it's much more likely that the majority of soldiers were killed by other threats. Infection and disease would have taken many of them, and also many of the soldiers were starving. Some crocodiles would have fed on the dead and wounded, but it's almost impossible that hundreds of soldiers were killed by crocodiles in such a small area. Today, some parts of this story are still a mystery, but I think it's fair to say that at least some crocodiles did fight back. For our next story, we will be staying in World War II, but we will be travelling in time a few months to July 1945. The focus of this story is the USS Indianapolis, and this ship was a Portland-class heavy cruiser of the United States Navy. This ship was launched in 1931, and it was the flagship for the commander of Scouting Force 1. Over the years, this ship was part of many successful missions and operations, and one of its most important journeys took place in July 1945. The USS Indianapolis was part of a top-secret mission where it had to deliver uranium and other components for Little Boy. Little Boy was the bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima, and it tragically led to the death of nearly 200,000 people. The USS Indianapolis was successful in its mission, but on the 30th of July it departed the Philippines on training duty, and it was torpedoed by an Imperial Japanese Navy submarine. It only took the ship 12 minutes to sink, and out of the 1,195 crewmen aboard, approximately 300 went down with the ship. Most of the remaining 900 would face a similar fate, as many would die from exposure, dehydration, and saltwater poisoning. As well as this, they faced threats in the form of wild animals, and these animals were sharks. The crew were stranded in the open ocean with few lifeboats, and almost no food or water. The Navy only learnt of the sinking 4 days after it happened, and this meant that the men were sitting ducks. Sharks would have been attracted by the dead bodies, and then they would target the men that were clinging on to life. It's estimated that up to 150 sailors and crew were killed by sharks, and there's a few species that could be behind this. As it happened in the open ocean, the Oceanic Whitetip is a good suspect, but it's also believed that tiger sharks and bull sharks could have played a part. The Oceanic Whitetip is one of the first species to appear at oceanic disasters, and this is why many experts believe it to be the main culprit. Once the rescuers arrived, only 316 men survived, and it's fair to say that these men were traumatized. This story goes down as the worst shark attack in history, and the main culprit was thought to be a shark that's not considered to be the most dangerous. For our final story, we will be travelling in time to 1968, and we will be heading to central Vietnam. Famously, the Vietnam War was a very brutal war, and it went on for far too long. Many veterans of the war still live among us, and the terrain of this war was very unforgiving. Not only did soldiers on both sides have to look out for the enemy, but they also had to look out for wildlife too. Snakes, spiders and crocodilians were always a problem, and in some rare cases, tigers were too. On the 22nd of December 1968, a man-eating tiger stalked an American team. They were patrolling an area in central Vietnam near the border with Laos, and after a delay in being heli-lifted from the area, they soon settled down to sleep. This was when the tiger made its move, and in the cover of darkness, it attacked one of the men. The men then ran at the beast, and the tiger jumped into a bomb crater with one of the men in its grasp. The Marines then quickly opened fire, and the injured tiger released its prey and staggered out of the bomb crater. Luckily, all the men survived the incident, but the tiger was not so lucky. It's believed that the same tiger had killed a man a month earlier in the same area, and it could have killed even more. It really is a shame that this tiger had to lose its life, but it just goes down as another victim of this very brutal war. Of course, there are plenty of other animals that are responsible for taking the lives of soldiers on the battlefield, with mosquitoes being one of the main culprits. These insects are probably the main killers, but that story isn't quite as interesting. If you think you know of any other stories that could have made it into this video, then let me know down in the comments below. But thank you for watching, I hope you enjoyed. If you liked it, please leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like these. But until next time, goodbye.